Want to go to a gig and see a bunch of robots rocking out? No, not those robots. I'm talking about a future where all music is generated by AI. No more writers or rappers. No more producers or performers. No more toe tappers. No more bass slappers. If we're to believe the hype, the music industry is on the cusp of being turned completely upside down by technology. And truth be told, the pundits might just be right. While tech has put the power to make music in the hands of every kid with an iPhone, the music business itself has become a pretty lopsided monster. But amongst all of the doom and gloom, I see a glimmer of hope. Call me an optimist, but I can see a future where technology is used to complement and expand the music industry, creating more opportunity for artists, labels, distributors, and everyone in between. So in this video, I'm going to answer the question: is the music industry doomed, or will the critics change their tune as AI unlocks a whole new era? Let's go. I'm Amir Iqbal from 5 Ways to Innovate. On this channel, I share insights and stories from my 20+ years leading innovation at some of the world's top companies, including Facebook and Deloitte Digital. I've been a semi-competent musician for most of my life, playing in rock bands since I was a teenager. I finally released my first album in 2023, an epic journey that took 20 years to come to life. Back in the day, when I first started making music, you had to rent a big expensive studio just to get any of your ideas down on tape. Nowadays, anyone can produce an entire album in their bedroom with a couple of guitars and a laptop. The music industry has now become completely democratized. Even the most underground indie artists can find their audience and thrive in the adoration of their millions of fans. Except none of that is true. Most of the music I hear still comes from well-known artists on major labels. It reminds me a lot of the film industry. We have the big budget titles from major studios that are guaranteed to generate $1 billion box office. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have the super niche independent artists grinding and hustling. My fellow fans of Rick Beato will be familiar with his Spotify top 10 song breakdowns on YouTube. He loves pointing out that the most popular music in the world today is also the most formulaic. The same 4 chords, perfectly quantized to a grid, overlaid with layers of auto-tuned vocals. The irony is that the music industry has backed itself into a corner where the most profitable form of music is also the most replaceable.
Like, look, if you want to sound like computers, it's easier for computers to sound like computers.
Back in the 90s, Dennis Pop and his team pioneered a production line system for writing pop music called track and hook. Producers work in teams to churn out snippets of music that are then assembled like Lego bricks into a single song, engineered to be a hit. Since then, we've seen K-pop take this formula to the next level. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to think of how this plays out. Rather than having to deal with unpredictable humans, the next K-pop sensations will be completely AI generated, A/B tested in an infinite array of configurations to perfect their hit-making capabilities. This isn't some far-off threat in the distance. In the last 12 months, we've seen an exponential explosion in both the quality and the quantity of AI music generation platforms. The experts are predicting that in another 12 months, they will be indistinguishable from today's top artists.
This is something that people will use in the future. They will just bypass composers and use this.
With the looming threat of AI on the horizon, what has the music industry been doing about it? While Hollywood was busy striking and working hard to lobby for regulation, the music industry was strangely silent. If history has shown us one thing, it's that technology tends to collapse the value chain. This means that the intermediaries are the first to be displaced. When was the last time you used a travel agent to book a flight? AI isn't just a threat to the artists who record the music, but also the managers, lawyers, and labels who currently act as intermediaries. In a world where there is unlimited AI-generated music, the entire value chain is collapsed into a single interface where listeners are served AI-generated music on demand. The music industry, as we know it, is standing on a burning platform. And like Kodak desperately trying to hold on to film sales while digital photography was knocking at their door, the incumbent record labels have the most to lose. I always like to look at other industries that have successfully reinvented themselves for inspiration. Everyone praised Netflix when they disrupted Blockbuster by launching a ubiquitous streaming service, but the truth is their real innovation came later. It wasn't enough to just innovate the distribution engine. They would have to innovate the supply side as well.
If everybody has all the same stuff, then there's going to be just a big race to the bottom, and it's not a very interesting business. And at the time, we were just kind of buying everyone else's reruns and putting them on Netflix. If we believe that the world we live in today, where there's an HBO Max and a Disney Plus and a Paramount Plus, all those people are not going to want to sell us their programming anyway.
Right.
So we better start getting good at it now.
Right. You knew that was coming, even though you were in business with those people. You knew that there was going to be that tipping point where it was going to go the other way, and you were going to be their competitor.
If we look at the music industry, however, the innovation equation has been very lopsided. Sure, there have been lots of innovation on the demand side. We saw the rise of MP3, then iTunes, Napster, and now Spotify. But over that same time horizon, we haven't seen anywhere near as much innovation on the supply side. Sure, DAWs have made the creative process much more accessible, but artists are still ultimately reliant on the same disconnected mess of systems if they want their music to actually be heard by anyone. Being a musical artist in 2025 is like being a Formula One driver with the fastest car on wheels, except you're trying to get to the moon and you have no idea how to get there. Here's the good news. I actually think there is a lot of pent-up value in the music industry that hasn't been realized yet. Putting my consultant hat on for a second, I went looking for a comprehensive map of the music industry value chain. One of the best examples I found was a piece of ongoing research from Open Music Observatory. They've spent 8 years interviewing over 4,000 music professionals across 12 countries to develop this model. What becomes immediately clear is that the music industry is not linear, and that from an innovation point of view, there are multiple chains simultaneously being collapsed by technology. I picked out 5 key points in the value chain that I think are prime targets for innovation. If we think of these 5 areas from the point of view of an incumbent like a record label, their size and scale become a distinct advantage. They have revenue streams, partnerships, network effects, and strategic moats already in place that give them a huge advantage over a startup trying to innovate in the same space. So with that lens, here are 5 billion-dollar businesses that the music industry is currently leaving on the table. First, creation. Lennon and McCartney, Simon and Garfunkel, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Great music is created in partnerships and communities. We wouldn't have been blessed with Motown without the great array of artists, players, and producers to form that community. While the digital revolution of audio workstations has democratized the process of creation, it's also driven artists away from communities and into their bedrooms. Personally, I've had a tiny glimmer of success finding collaborators online on Fiverr, but I had spent thousands of dollars and trialed dozens of collaborators over many months before I landed on one who actually worked out well. That's not something most people have the time or resources to do. Imagine if a dedicated platform existed to match writers, top liners, players, and producers from all around the world. Think of it like Tinder for musicians, with a bit of intelligence thrown in to analyze musical styles to maximize the accuracy of those matches. It would go a long way further than the current virtual jam session type offerings available. I know that's something I would definitely use on my next album. Second is promotion. We've all heard the story. Justin Bieber was discovered on YouTube by Scooter Braun and became a huge star. It's a fairy tale with something of a nightmare ending. The truth for most artists is that if you want your music to be heard, you need to go out and build your own following. And in a world with millions of other artists, the ones who get rewarded are the best promoters, not the best creators. I spend a scary number of hours each week watching my favorite music YouTubers. The problem is they are all competing on YouTube, which is a platform powered by an algorithm that forces all content to become ever more hyperbolic and ultimately more generic. What if there was a dedicated content platform for musicians? A place I can go when I want to learn about piano theory or hear behind the scenes stories from the Beatles documentary, or get some help to figure out that very specific plugin setting I'm struggling with in Logic this week. Content creators wouldn't have to compete with Mr. Beast to be seen anymore. Instead, simply creating and watching relevant and engaging content by musicians for musicians. Third is distribution. The filter bubble became real. Whenever I push Spotify to play me new music I might like, within about 10 tracks, it lands back on the same songs and artists. Like every algorithmic feed, it's over-optimized for what it knows I like, rather than pushing the boundaries of my taste. Now, as an artist with an album on Spotify, I've come to realize that the system isn't that different from the radio stations of yesteryear. What people hear is ruled by playlists, curated by a handful of people, and of course the option to pay for an ad campaign to boost my visibility. Let's look at another industry for a second. The New York Times have managed to thrive in the digital era. Operating profit is up 21% year on year. Their subscriber base is 5 times what they had during their peak print period, more than double their nearest competitor. They did this by doubling down on quality journalism that readers would be willing to pay for. If the New York Times has proved one thing, it's that there is a large audience of people who are willing to pay a subscription for expertly curated content and points of view. Whoever figures out how to combine expert playlists and algorithms to push musical boundaries and perfect the discovery system will be onto a huge winner. Fourth is monetization. For decades, the dream of every garage band was to be plucked from obscurity and get signed to a major label. Young musicians today are savvy enough to know this isn't really how the world works. One thing that jumps out of the value map diagram is that the means of monetization are now broad and diverse. Any musician looking to make money from their art today needs to adopt a portfolio mindset. Money may not come in from publishing, but you can make up for it with live shows, merch, live streams, Patreons, and even licensing. We've seen stock music dabble in this space on platforms like Artlist, Epidemic Sound, Pond5, and Audio Jungle. But for the time being, they mostly resemble a faceless library. I mean, the word stock is right there in the name.
I think it sounds stock to my ears. I mean, you want me to write it down?
It feels like there's an opportunity to borrow a page from the book of TikTok and Instagram and turn content creators into influencers. If composers could step out from behind the faceless catalog and make a name for themselves, it opens up a range of opportunities from brands who want sponsored content all the way through to commissioned work. With a little bit of thought, there could be multiple avenues for monetization beyond simply crossing your fingers and hoping your Spotify streams generate some cash. Finally, we have proliferation. In many creative professions, the live show has become the primary way of engaging audiences and generating income. But the difference between a live podcast or a stand-up comic and a live band is pretty vast. You can't just turn up and rely on the house microphone. You have gear to transport, vans to rent, musicians to house and feed, lighting and sound guys to deal with, and venues that need guarantees of attendance. This is why musicians have always been reliant on booking agents and tour managers. But remember my earlier point about how technology historically disintermediates various industries. At its core, booking a live show is a series of logistical problems to be solved. With enough information, an intelligent assistant could connect artists with gigs, point them in the direction of suitable gear vendors, and assist with transport arrangements. Could AI possibly be used to facilitate the process of booking live gigs? Well, if TripIt and Concur can make sense of the mess that is business travel and expenses, it doesn't seem crazy to think that a purpose-built solution for musicians could open up the world of live shows to more artists and venues. So if a record label wanted to go out and capitalize on this window of opportunity tomorrow, does it mean they would now have to go out and build 5 new tech companies from scratch? In short, no. A much more direct approach would be a case of borrow rather than buy or build. For example, it would be much easier to partner with Fiverr to spin out a musician-focused talent marketplace than try to reinvent their business and compete. The incumbents should be looking at every possible opportunity to utilize the existing tech ecosystem as an accelerator. While each of these businesses could hypothetically be built into billion-dollar businesses on their own, the real magic happens when companies shift from thinking about standalone products to designing connected platforms. If the music industry was suddenly presented with a single end-to-end suite that solved a range of challenges in the current value chain, it would revolutionize the entire industry, much as Adobe has done for brand marketers and Salesforce has done for sales and automation. One thing is for sure, some smart company is going to figure out how to harness the power of digital transformation and AI and aim it at the music industry soon. And when they do, we're going to see a whole new era where tunes and technology come together in perfect harmony. What do you think? Has the music industry booked itself a one-way ticket to disruption? Will artists be content to continue fueling the industry with fresh content in an increasingly difficult marketplace? Do you think the major labels will react, or will they have their own Kodak moment and be beaten to the punch by tech companies? I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially all you musos out there. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. I'm Amar Iqbal. Stay tuned and I'll see you soon.